Hello, everyone. This is Willem,
And this is Tim.
and this is Hear Me Out Pitch. uh, like the X-Files. That's what we are. Well, good morrow, afternoon, tarde. I don't even know.
Good day.
Bon, boa tarde. We speak Portuguese now. Would it be
Buenas
tarde?
tardes.
Would it be tardes? Because it's technically the afternoon. I guess we can say noches. I guess I don't know.
Sun hasn't gone down.
Okay, so you'd still say,
Buenas tardes.
oh, that's cool. I don't really know math. I know a little bit of Spanish, but I'm not as fluent as Tim, so it's fine.
I'm not even fluent.
I have a random question for you, Tim. When that substitute teacher Key and Peele skit, you know what I'm talking about?
I know the one.
So the Timothy.
Timothy.
Did you get that a lot?
All the time.
Okay.
All
I can't believe
time. I still get it.
It just clicked in my head, and I was like, I've never called Tim Timothy. I've called you Tiny Tim forever, but never ever have I been like, Timothy, where you at?
I get called Timothy all the time. And you know how I answer?
Present. Oh, I feel so bad. Every Aaron, every Blake,
Aaron,
every Chanel,
Balake.
every what was some of the other ones? Oh, Jacqueline. Oh my gosh.
Jake Wellen.
I feel so bad. People are like, well, Willem, do you think you mess up your name? I'm like, no, I think you'd actually say my name correct more than most people. People still my name with the E, and yet they still go William. He'd probably go Willem. Maybe he'd go Will E.M. But at least it sounds better than what I get. I got a Wallop once. Wallop. And the dude even spelled it because it was when I was doing swim coaching, and this parent wanted me to help his son in private lessons, and that's because that's a service I offered. And he's like, "What was your name again?" And I said Willem, and he said, and I see him mouth, and it looks like Willem, and I was like, "Yeah." I couldn't really hear him. All the kids were leaving. It was in a crowded pool, and I walk in to the lifeguard house at the end of my shift, and I hear supervisor laughing like hysterically, and I'm like, what's going on? And they go, is that Willem? And I'm like, yeah. Oh my gosh, you need to come in here and see this note I got. Wallop. Wallub. My friend
Wallop.
She saved me in as Wallop for the longest time. I was Wallop at work. And I'm so glad it did not stick, but sometimes people go, what's the worst way people have said your name? I go, Wallop. Wallop. My name is Wallop. I'm a wallaby. Like, it was just completely...
That is really funny.
Oh, redonkulous. Oh, well, enough of the name games. Enough name games. Hello, everyone, and we're glad you're here to make it, and sorry for that random tangent, but it made me laugh.
Hopefully it made you laugh.
I hope it did too. And there's no really good way to segue into this, but I'll just Tim. What are we gonna talk about today?
I see. Well, we're gonna talk about a movie called Season of the Witch.
Oh boy!
It's a Nicolas Cage movie. Christopher Lee is in it.
Oh my!
For those of you who don't know who that is, he's Saruman in Lord of the Rings.
Count Dooku in Star Wars. This movie was definitely it was a very small cast. It came out in 2011. And I think honestly I'm really glad we did it because it's spoopy season. We're getting to it. So we did do a Season of the Witch, and sadly there was no pumpkin spice at all in this movie. 0 out of 10. I really need like that pumpkin spice. Ugh.
Side note. We went to Cold Stone last night. And Sabrina got the pumpkin flavored ice cream.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And it was at that moment I realized what season it was. officially. Like it hit me. Like I knew we were approaching spooky season, right? Spooky month is in a few weeks,
Uh-huh.
but
We have tomorrow is mid-September. That to me is like, oh, I saw someone has
uh-huh.
spoopy. I say spoopy. I don't care. Y'all can just judge me. I love it so much. But enough about
Anyway, yes.
spoopy time. Oh, this movie was. How did you like it, Tim? What was a good thing about this movie?
One good thing I would say the acting. The acting was pretty decent.
Yeah.
They did a pretty good job.
Looking back on it,
Which
yeah.
it's Nicolas Cage, so it could have swung either way.
You're absolutely right. And it had Ron
Ron Perlman.
Perlman. For those of you who don't know who Ron Perlman is, he was Hellboy. If you ever were a big Guillermo del Toro fan, he was the voice of Slade in Teen Titans, the voice of the Lich King. I can go on so many things of what he's the voice of.
He also totally looks like the person I would cast for a live action Monsters
For
Incorporated.
Sully, right?
Uh-huh, for Sully.
He really could be. He's really gruff, and I
He
believe
he has the face structure of Sully.
I believe he's from the New England area.
I have
I
no
don't really
idea.
know, but he did a good job. But yeah, it's just a simple movie for those of you who vaguely remember this at all. It came out in 2011, and it follows Nicolas Cage and Ron Perlman's characters of
Bayman
Bayman and Felson.
Felson.
They are two crusaders who leave the Crusades after they realize that it's awful and people are just killing in the name of God, quote unquote. And oh, that scene was. I wish they would have. I needed a little more impact for that scene, to be honest.
I kind of agree. Like it yeah, we saw Bayman stab a woman and watch her die, right? And that was like in terms of storytelling, that was a really good way to get that kind of shock. And it was the way they choreographed that scene was good.
Yeah.
I think they did a good job, but I agree. I think maybe because they didn't use like any somber music, and the scene only lasted 30 seconds.
And that's the big change from them. I would have done. Have you seen X-Men Origins?
I haven't. I
Okay.
haven't seen any of the X-Men movies.
Really?
None.
I
should.
recommend. I recommend. I don't even know which one to recommend. I would recommend just the first three.
They're
Days of Future. Just you know what? Watch Days of Future Past first. Watch that one.
they are all on my list except for the rated R movies, the rated R ones.
I think there's only one. Logan, and that's it.
Logan. I
Logan.
think.
Oh, I
Well,
wish if I could
I
get
don't
like
know.
a VidAngel version for you to watch. I definitely would say watch Logan, or just find it.
I've heard Logan is good.
It is. Oh, anyway.
Yeah.
Speaking of Wolverine, X-Men Origins. So Wolverine and his brother
Mhm.
are both these old mutants, and they are fighting wars. They're both from Canada, fighting wars. They both can't really die. They have an amazing healing factor, and it shows them fighting and shows them kind of fighting through wars, surviving cannonball hits, getting shot up. And like by the time we get, so they start from the not Civil War, Revolutionary War, to all these wars and around Vietnam, Korea. We see that Logan is noticing a bloodlust in his brother, and he's starting to notice how awful this is. And I kind of wish we would have gotten something like that instead of
Mhm.
they're killing, they're killing, and then when they bust through this door, because they haven't really sieged anywhere yet. We were just seeing them fighting on lands.
Yeah.
But when they bust through that door, they're like, those inside have sinned against God, kill them in Jesus' name. And he goes in and stabs someone, and it was a woman. But I'm like, this is the first woman he's stabbed through? Is this really the 1st
Mhm.
person he's done that to? Like, I kind of wish we would have gotten more of him noticing how awful men were being. I maybe like we see men like through one before one scene, not to be awful, but the Crusades were awful. But we see them like open a door, hear women screaming, and then they like chuckle menacingly and go inside. Like that could have been.
One way they could have done it is later in the movie, right? Um, Kay ends up killing what's his name, um, Eckhart by accident.
Oh, the young squire boy,
Uh-huh.
or the young
The young knight to be,
who was also an altar boy,
who was
who
also
wants
an
to
altar
become a
boy.
knight.
Um, he and Eckhart, another he was who was Eckhart?
Eckhart was just
Was
he
he
was
one of
a
the
he was a
he a
knight.
knight?
He was a knight of the
Okay.
town they were from. So maybe before we get into that, we should say more about the
Yes.
or
Well, the scene that I'm talking about is um they're together in a dark, basically mass grave, right?
oh,
Um
part was gross.
and Eckhart hears his daughter laughing, and his daughter's been dead from the plague for a while. Um anyway, by complete accident, right? It's dark. Everybody's on edge because they're hunting this witch, and Eckhart just kind of appears, and the altar boy Kay, he ends up, or Kai, they pronounced it Kai, um, ends up stabbing Eckhart just complete
He
accident.
just turns around with the sword facing out, and he
Uh-huh.
runs right into it. And
Yeah,
that can happen. That's why you're
I,
supposed to
f-
put your sword down.
I feel like something like that for Bayman could have been, and it maybe,
Oh.
and this sounds terrible, but just for the effect, right? Maybe it could be more like a teenager, like a younger person.
It could have been a young girl, or like he's
Like
freaking out and he rams into her,
it could be a young girl, and that could be his whole reason to want to protect the girl later.
and he's having just memories of what he did, and now he
Uh,
accidentally killed another person. So,
Something like that.
yeah. So let's rewind to this awful scene of them realizing how awful the Crusades were. They leave, they desert, and these two are both very well known. Like the head man, the voice of God, who they don't even really say his name. He was just the head of the crusade. He said he was the voice of God.
The
Says you can't leave, blah blah blah. So they're deserters, and throughout
the,
history,
the sergeant in arms.
yeah, most most deserters throughout history, if you desert in any way, you get killed. That's
Yeah,
just the
you
history
you
of things.
are executed for basically treason.
Yeah, it
That's
is treason, and to them, it was against God. Oh, sorry, the Crusades. I could go off on days about the Crusades and witch trials. They just both drive me nuts. So, yeah, this movie was just two of my favorite things in the world.
I hear a hint of sarcasm.
Oh, the hint is there. So Felson and Bayman travel to kind of go more into the summary. We'll do a quick little summary. They leave the Crusades after realizing how awful it is. They're traveling, I believe it's going back to Europe.
I think so.
And this is taking place in the 1300s. So they run upon a small little village, like a small little place, and holy crap, the Black Plague has entered, and it is gross. It is nasty
It's
looking.
nasty.
It was really gross. They did a good job with that makeup. I was like, don't touch them. They looked like they were covered in these dark pustules. Their eyes were like, it was, ooh, it was gross. It was gross. It was gross. It was gross.
It made me uncomfy.
Very uncomfy. And they get to a village, and the cardinal of this, not village, I would say, would you say it was a village? I don't know what you call those back then.
I would say it was a small.
Township?
It would be a township.
Okay. So the cardinal of this township, played by the one and only Christopher Lee, which I think Tim was like
Mate.
started going, wait.
Yep. May he rest in peace.
He rested. Sorry, wait a minute. Sir Christopher Lee.
Sir Christopher Lee.
Christopher Lee. Wow, we got to remember he was knighted.
He was knighted.
And he is one of the few men that I'm like, I will do my best to refer him as Sir Christopher. I don't really, he was like the real inspiration of like James Bond, right?
Really?
You will have to look your homework. Look up. It's insane. There's a reason why Peter Jackson wanted him.
Mm-hmm.
And he also met the author of, he knew J.R.R. Tolkien. So he was like, I know how that man thought. He talked to him many times. So yeah, he's. I know how much you love him. So look up his history more. You'll love him even more. He is amazing. So again, Sir Christopher Lee is the cardinal of this town, the leader, and he asks these two, deserters because they figure out who they are. They say, "You're going to help us do it. We need you to do something for God." And he's like, "I no longer." And Nicolas Cage is, "I no longer work." I can't even do a Nicolas Cage voice.
It was a bit cheesy.
He gets the cheese when Nicolas Cage talks sometimes. The cheese.
Nicolas Cage is the cheese.
Like, get your nachos out because the cheese is coming with Nicolas Cage.
Yep.
And he just doesn't fit. Like, all of them are like speaking very regally, and then Nicolas Cage, like, I no longer work for. Like, it's him and Keanu Reeves, man. The way they talk, I wish I need a movie with those two together. I would die. So they are tasked to taking this girl who they believe is a witch who has caused the Black Plague to the monks of this faraway village. They didn't even. Ugh.
There was a lot of issues. There were a lot of issues with the plot.
Yeah,
I feel like
they're very vague with the names. They just want to take this to a monastery.
Well, they had the name of the monastery. I can't remember what it was.
They rarely said it though. I feel like
started with an S. It was like Sebarak, I think.
Oh no, that was the name of one of the characters.
No, I think that was.
Oh,
Debelzak
was
the priest
that went with them.
I think Sebarak was the monastery. But yeah, there were a few issues with just like the reasoning behind things. Like
they kept like hinting, like, is this girl that is a witch? Is she not? Because they made her like
the issue. Here's the issue I had. It is. They wanted to hang her, right? But then the only thing they could do otherwise is take her to this monastery to have a monk with a special book.
Book of Solomon.
Yeah, it's like I think it was called like the Key of Solomon.
Oh yeah, the Key of Solomon. Yep.
Which was just a book, and I'm assuming it's Songs of Solomon, plus some probably.
There's so much of like Catholicism, it's weird.
Yeah, but anyway, they had to take her there to get her exorcised, essentially. But that was the only other option. Like, I don't know. It just felt like they limited their options too much, and that was one of probably the biggest issues I had. It's redonkadonk. No one cares about the monastery. Surprises me.
I think really because the base of this movie, it really doesn't matter. They need to take her to an isolated monastery where the monks will give her a quote unquote fair trial as requested by Bellum?
Bayman.
I don't know why I can never say his name. Bellum.
Bellum is a demon in The Legend of Zelda.
Oh, really?
It's the big boss in Phantom Hourglass.
Nerd. I'm just kidding.
I am a nerd.
I don't know why
you are too. That's part of why we're doing this podcast.
So we're talking about taking her to the isolated thing. This is gonna be so much fun to edit. But what were we talking about before that?
We were talking about the journey.
The journey before destination.
The whole point. Like
the whole
basically
point.
The plot of the movie.
It's the plot of the movie. They just need to take her there, and they are followed with a knight, Eckhart. They also are gone with Kay, an altar boy who wants to become a knight.
And Debelzak,
a priest.
A priest and
father.
And Hagamar. Who is their guide.
Well, I liked Hagamar. I really did.
I liked him too. This
was not a very Don't get too attached to these characters. Yeah, we talked about it for a little bit that they don't really do a good job. Like the whole time of this movie, one of the biggest reasons why I was intrigued for most of this movie is because I was like, is she a witch? Is she not? Because she would like have these moments where, you know, before they left, they were being held captive because they were kind of refusing and going back and forth between helping them take the girl and not. And at one point, Bayman wakes up in the middle of the night and finds the girl, who they never say her name till literally the very end of the movie. So we're just going to call her the girl. He sees her just sobbing on the floor, covered in whip marks on her back. She's been flogged. And you're like, ah, dang. And you just feel so bad for her. And what was her name? Claire Foy. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
She's so sweet. She did such a good job. Like the tender moments with her were good. Then there were parts where she was being kind of like seductive,
really creepy
and creepy. I was like, oh, she did such a good job doing all of those.
She did a really good job playing all the parts of her character.
Like again, the acting was on point. It felt kind of like a play acting, and I don't mind play acting.
It felt like play acting for Nicolas Cage. I think everybody else played their part really, really well, especially Sir Christopher Lee.
Well, of course,
because it's Sir Christopher Lee.
Oh, you need to look up some of his renditions on old Shakespearean plays. I believe he did Hamlet or he did Macbeth. Oh my gosh!
I believe it was Macbeth. I think I remember.
I think you're right. He. Oh, sorry. I have a man. I had a man. I mean, I guess I still do. Christopher Lee was like he's the type of old man I want to be someday. Like he was a cool man. Anyway, but yeah, the acting was on point. And as they start this journey, they have Hagar leading them to get there to this monastery. Like one of the first obstacles we get is they run into this village, and the witch escapes. The girl, escapes after what was his name?
Well, it was Eckhart and de Belzac were having an argument
because he didn't want to take her because he's like, I'm not going to be a part of you. We all well know what was going to happen at that monastery is what he was saying. He's like, I know what's going to happen there, and I don't want to be a part of it. She reminds me of my daughter. I don't want to do this. Mm-hmm. And the poor man lost his wife and children to this plague, and he didn't want to see any more death.
It ends up where the girl stabs de Belzac, the priest, in the hand with his own cross,
which kind of bugs me.
Weird,
because they were really following certain Catholicistic rules, then something about that cross should have really made a difference. You know what I mean? I'm like, you should not. Looking back now, I'm like,
a demon
should not
be able to touch a holy symbol of God.
If you are following, which they did through this movie, especially at the end, it was like, so I don't know. Part of me was like, that probably shouldn't work now. Looking back on that, so we might have just spoiled something. Oh well.
They'll learn sooner.
You will learn, my young friends.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. Anyway, so she takes the key to the cart as well, stabbing de Belzac, and takes the key and runs. And so they end up chasing her through the forest till they get to this village.
Another village.
That has also been touched by the plague. And they end up chasing her into the maze, a maze that is a mass grave.
And those were very real.
They were very real.
They are. The Black Plague depressing. Oh my gosh. Could you imagine taking all of your relatives and just throwing it in and you're hoping you don't die? Oh, I can't. The mass grave scene. I wish it was a little bit longer. And I wish, like you said, I wish all of them was seeing something.
I agree. Yeah. I think, well, the whole point of that was to kill Eckhart.
Oh, that's right.
Because Eckhart didn't want her to go to the monastery.
And that was another thing that I was like, oh,
Hmm.
that twist at the end, that twist on the at the end really made me go, okay, that wasn't bad of a twist, but yet I still hate it.
Yeah,
It was a
I
good
I feel like they could
twist.
have built it up a little bit more.
Maybe. I don't know. That's what was
We could
so
have
weird.
we you know what we could have had another Bob to just solidify the thing at the bridge on the bridge later. I feel like on the bridge would have been a good
And what bugs me
scene,
is
and
that
I'll
she,
talk about that later
yeah, we need to
when
get
we
to the
get to
bridge
the
because there's
bridge.
like that one thing about the bridge and I'm like, why did you do that thing? Because it's funny because the character did that thing, it led to their demise at the end.
Exactly.
I'm like, you could have just went. I'm just
Yep.
anyway. We'll get to that scene. So as Tim talked about before, what was it? These Eckhart,
Eckhart.
he's seeing his daughter. He sees
Hmm.
his daughter. He's running, and he sees his daughter, and he's charging toward her, happy. And as he gets to her, it turns out it's Kai. He's been put under a spell, and he has a sword right through him, and he dies.
Well, and he still doesn't even see
And he
Kai.
doesn't register.
He so the way that they filmed that was that Eckhart, from Eckhart's perspective, it was his daughter that stabbed him.
Oh, I didn't even think of it like that.
Uh-huh.
Oh my
And
gosh.
no, it was Kai, and Kai shock, right?
And he
And
just slides
they
off the
did
sword.
a really good job at showing shock. If Kai stabbed somebody, that is exactly what I would imagine. Like freeze. He
He
froze.
froze, and they
He was
found him still
terrified.
holding the sword in that
He
position because
didn't know
Eckhart
what
just
to do.
fell off the sword, and poor Kai is just sitting there holding it. They get to
Uh-huh.
him, and I love how they didn't blame him. They were like,
I agree.
he ran out of nowhere, and I had my sword up, and he just ran straight into me,
He didn't
and he froze,
he
and they
didn't
were
even
like,
see me.
yeah, that had like they looked at like I felt like there was a moment where, Bayman and oh my gosh,
Felson.
Felson. I am sorry with these names. They don't say their names a lot. They say them a few times to each other, but
They say some of the names a few
a
times.
few times. But I don't know why I can't. They're not that. I don't know. I just don't want to mess them up. Anyway, but Felson and Bayman just looked at each other and gave each other a look like, yeah, that makes sense. The poor priest was like, oh my gosh, how could you do that? And then where was the farmer, the guide? Was he in that scene, or did he just come up later? Like, what happened?
Um, I believe he stayed back with Priest
Oh, that's right,
because
because
the
he
priest had
was.
been, yeah, he was helping wrap bandage the priest's injured hand.
Oh, and they really and they kept trying to make the point that the priest kept um physically abusing, and I don't think I almost for a second thought they were implying he assaulted her sexually,
That was the vibe I got,
but
and it
then I'm
made me
like,
really worried to continue the movie.
yeah, because I was
But
like,
then they didn't, and it was like just your classic flogging, which, to be fair, is pretty bad in its
and
own
pretty
right.
traumatizing on this
But
poor woman.
it's not. I feel like the implications that they had that ended up being false.
They kept
They
throwing
should have.
tiny little things at the audience, and honestly, what if he never did? Because they could
Yeah.
have been no those. I'm pretty sure that.
Well, no, because there. So here's the thing: medieval torture, right? It wasn't just the whip. They had hooks, right? They had meat. They basically had tiny meat hooks,
Oh, yeah.
and that was kind of the vibe that I got. Um, if I remember right, we even saw one of the meat hooks, one of the tiny meat hooks. I might be wrong.
It might have been hanging in the dungeon.
But anyway, that was kind of what it looked like to me. It wasn't whips. They were not stripes. It looked more like cuts. Anyway, yeah, the implications that he assaulted her,
It seemed really
they
likely that she
pushed
did.
it they pushed it heavily, but I don't know. I feel like they could have done away with those implications. I feel like that would have made this movie maybe a little bit more. I can't say innocent because about the Crusades and the Black
The thing
Plague
is,
and
I'm on the
witches and
total.
demons and stuff, but
I'm on the opposite end. So if I would have done this movie, I would have had no demonic stuff, and I would have had the monsters be the men. We kind of talked about this
mhm,
after we watched the movie, and I would totally have made it revealed that the priest was, again, maybe not the sexual, but maybe lusting after her, like give it a Count Frollo vibe from Hunchback of Notre Dame sort of
yeah,
thing, but still abusing and liking it way too much. I definitely would have.
almost like masochism.
Yes, I definitely would have made it like that to show that the everything awful that they were saying is that the monsters in this movie were humans. And again, that's just me, because again, I look at the Crusades and I'm like, and I look at the witch trials and I go, this just shows how awful humans are.
I would have taken it a completely
I
different
know.
route. I would have taken it completely just like Pompeii last week. I would have taken a completely different route. But I'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about those more
Little
after we
later.
get more of the summary, because after Eckhart dies, they're like, all right, well, we give him a funeral and moving right along. And then
They gave him a good funeral.
they gave him a good funeral. I do,
was-
do not bury me with rocks. Build me a grave or do a
I'll
pyre.
put you in a mausoleum.
Put me in a mausoleum.
I will build you a mausoleum with my bare hands.
Or just do a big pyre. Honestly, I don't want animals eating it, or just cremate me, or turn me into a tree. I don't know, whatever. But so moving right along, they have the awesome the bridge scene. The bridge scene was
I
pretty
liked the
cool.
bridge
I
scene.
didn't mind it one bit. It was a good little filler part.
For those of you who haven't seen the movie, the bridge scene that we're talking about, basically, there's this old rickety bridge
Rickety beyond belief.
that, and they've got to get two horses and a cart, a very heavy cart across, and there's no way they were gonna get it across.
Ugh.
Just riding the horses across.
And Bayman goes across first with his horse.
Bayman
and,
just takes it. He just, you know.
Nicolas Cage. I got this. I'm gonna do it.
Yep.
I'm gonna walk across.
For Zach. Don't worry, guys. I got this. He'll understand. Anyway, that whole scene was great, and they ended up taking the horses all the way across, and then it's just the cart, and so they've got to pull the cart across, and the cart is heavy, and so it won't go up the incline, right? Because the bridge dips, and then it goes up, and they've got to pull it up.
So we got,
And it was
who was on the? It was Felsen,
Felsen,
Kai, and
Kai
no,
and de Belzac were on. Not Kai.
not Kai, because he was
No.
with Nicolas Cage. Who was the?
No, what happened is they got it. They went across. They started going across with a rope
Uh,
to ease it onto the bridge, and they slip, and because de Belzec's hand, and he's not wearing gloves, so rope burn
rope burn
hurts.
is awful.
And
Oh, it was the Belzac,
Hagamar
Hagamar,
and
and
Felsen.
Felsen. They have it wrapped around a tree and they're trying to ease it across.
Uh-huh.
It slips. They all fall forward, and Kai and Bayman are
They're
trying
pushing
to
it.
push it.
And so everybody else gets across. They all go across,
Yeah.
except Felsen and Bayman are now pushing from behind, while the others have attached the rope to the cart again with the horses, and they're all pulling it up. They're trying to get it off of the bridge.
That's right.
And two of the boards snap. Two of the boards right next to each other snap. One of the wheel dips, and it throws both Bayman and Kai to the side.
And the whole time, the girl is inside going, "I can help.
I can help.
I will
Let
lessen.
me out."
I will lessen the weight." And it was kind of like, "But you're a witch," and we should have mentioned that she's incredibly strong.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, this scene where she's talking about how she's able to get out, she can lessen the load. It just reminded me of Monty Python, where if she floats, if she's lighter than a duck, then she's a witch.
That too.
You know,
I was like,
I
I'm like, but you're supposed to weigh just a feather.
I was totally expecting them to make some reference to it, and they didn't, and I'm a little disappointed in that.
Like fine, I would have loved like if you did yours, she actually does get out and they're like, I literally feel no difference in them. They're just dying. So, but
Or like she must weigh like a feather.
yeah, she must weigh
Something
like a
like
feather,
that.
like something, and everyone in the audience goes,
Yep, exactly.
because again, these are not jokes. We're not joking about actual. Yeah, it's the witch trials are. Ugh. Anyway,
But yeah, so anyway, Kai kind of goes off the side of the bridge. And
he
he's
doesn't
barely
kind of.
hanging on.
He goes off.
He's barely hanging on, like he's about to fall, and the girl. This scene. I feel like they could have done something different. They could have done this a little differently to just keep us a little bit in the dark, keep us questioning. This scene solidified.
It confirmed that
supernatural.
that something's wrong with her.
She grabs Kai
with one hand
and lifts him up
by the forearm. She's got his one hand and grabbing his forearm and just.
It was a whole Darth Vader scene.
Yeah,
right. Like she was lifting him up
with no problem,
with no issue, and I was expecting like some rebel scum to start shooting at her or something. You know.
But yeah, like that was the point that I go, okay, something's wrong with her.
Yeah.
Because she'd always mention, like, you're not like the others, you're kind. And she would, like, be sweet. And then all of a sudden she'd be like, there's other favors I can do from inside the cage, and acting all, like, seductive. And I was like,
creepy.
Oh my gosh, why are you changing mood so fast? Like, I thought, I was like, okay, maybe she's possessed by something, and maybe she has mood swings, or maybe she's like,
maybe she's just playing all sides.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, maybe she's just trying to be weird.
She was creepy. Again, Claire Foy did a really good job.
Maybe she accepted her fate, because honestly, she's like, because she did mention how a girl in her village was
suspected,
and they filled rocks in her pockets, throwed her in, and she didn't drown. But because she barely survived. She comes up coughing and survives. But you know what that meant?
She was a witch.
She was a witch, so they burned her at the stake. Mm-hmm. Oh, again, the witch trials drive me nuts. So
yep.
I was like, anyway, so after this whole debacle, they are like, we'll rest by the road because this incredibly creepy, thick as pea soup fog is covering the trail. They're like, we'll rest for the night. And Hagamar, thank you. Again, these names these kind of names are hard for me. And Hagamar comes up with a crossbow, and he's about to lift the tarp, and he's gonna shoot her, and he's like, no, I have an idea. We shoot her, and then we just be done with it. We just say she tried to get away and provoked us, and then you're like, oh.
None would be the wiser.
And then the girl starts howling, and oh my goodness, and in the summary they're called dire wolves, and I'm like, do not call them dire wolves, because if they were supposed to be dire wolves, they'd be way bigger. Those were just wolves.
A dire wolf is massive.
I would love one.
Like, if you've seen Lord of the Rings, the wargs.
Yeah, that's a dire wolf. That's a dire wolf. What Jon Snow is playing with, that's a dire wolf. That huge thing.
Massive.
They have to CGI it because it's that big. So, yeah, don't you dare call those dire wolves.
It's a wolf the size of a horse.
I would love, like, a dire Great Dane. That thing would be the size of a horse. What you ride in on? My Dio Great. It'd probably be so sick. It'd probably die early. Sorry, that was morbid.
That was depressing.
I'm sorry. Jeez. Big dogs don't live that long. Anyway, so speaking of giant puppers, these puppers kill.
They kill Hagamar.
Oh my gosh. And they all just stare at the witch, and they're like, oh, you just did that. And they had to, and it was funny because they're like riding away with the cart, and Hagamar gets eaten, and
Paimon gets upset and he wants to fight him, and then
it's too late, and you just see
Felson's like, there's this reminded me of yet another Star Wars scene. Master Skywalker, there are too many of them.
Oh my gosh,
what are we going to do? You know,
I've only seen the third movie once because of that scene. I can't watch it.
It was that scene, that's what that reminded me of. It's just Felson was like, there's too many of them, we gotta go.
It's just there's
and so they kept They
They
kept
kept
going and
marching on to the
left
monastery.
left a dead eaten Hagamar behind.
And Bayman's had enough of it.
Bayman's had enough of it.
He grabs the crossbow and and poor Kai is like, "Don't do it. We don't need it. This is fine. We're almost there." And he like shoves him away, and he turns around, and oh my goodness, Felson is standing there blocking her away, and he goes, "The the destination. The what did he say? He's like, our destination is in sight." And you
Yeah,
look
something
up,
like
and
that.
it's a beautiful monastery, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
It actually looked really, really cool.
It did. It again. This movie had so like the actors and the feel. I felt like we were, except when Nicolas Cage would open his mouth at some parts. He's like,
Yeah.
I just you know how he talks. He's just so. I'm sick of everyone dying. I need to just end this. And you're like, oh my
Yep.
gosh, Nick Cage, where's my cheese? Where's my chips for all that cheese? Oh, but I love him. I can't give him crap. He's made some amazing movies.
He has made some amazing movies.
Absolutely. And I honestly do love his voice. He does a lot of good voices. So,
He is a good actor.
but he can just be so cheesy, and it's okay because that's the what we want.
It's what we expect.
It's what we want, what we expect, it's what we love about him. And yeah, they get to the monastery, and
And there's nobody home.
is that the point where it's oh yeah, because she's like she just starts calling them out like, oh, oh my gosh, the two crusaders, the two deserters, the two crusaders who think they're so wise and saving one little girl is gonna save them, and the vile priest, and like starts calling them out, and then they're like, you are no witch, and he starts quoting some stuff in Latin after he's looking through his Bible, and it turns out she's a demon.
Yep. She
And
burns the cart around her and
it's just,
transforms into a demon, and then he starts speaking different words that scare the demon away.
he's like,
and
do
then-
not say it. I think he was like saying its name maybe, but as I told Tim before this episode, I was like, oh crap, what was the name of the demon? Like, what was there was no name for it. It was just demon. They didn't even like try to be like, oh. So the whole time the demon had been trying to get to this monastery for some reason. And they realized that because Eckhart, even though he was being good and kind about it, he was going to stop the journey. So he got killed. Hagamar was going to try to kill her. Not good intentions, but still was going to stop the journey. Got killed off. So the demon, and we should have mentioned this at the beginning. There was the witch trial at the beginning.
Yes.
And they kill 3 women.
Mm-hmm.
And as the priest was pulling the bodies up, one of them.
Well, so the old lady, there's 3. There's an old lady, and then there's 2 middle-aged women. The old lady starts to, like, she looks like your typical witch, right? The clouded eye and claws for fingernails and all that, and she starts like sputtering, like basically
After they pull the bodies
after
out.
they pull the bodies up, like they've been dead for a while, and they pull the bodies up, and the old lady starts like seizing, like she's being possessed or whatever.
But that
and
was
then
probably just maybe she was still alive.
I think it was probably post-mortem seizing, though it could have been
It couldn't have been that.
it could have been that she was a witch.
Maybe.
Like legitimately it might have been that she was a witch. And then anyway, the priest, different priest, is able to speak the words quick enough, and her body goes silent. And then he starts pulling up the second lady and gets that one off, and then he pulls up the last one, or tries to, and this one is just pulling against him.
And this one was begging not to die and saying that she was like trying to say she was a witch so that she can get let go. She's like, please, please. I confess. And you said my soul will be saved. And he's like, but we need to burn the body of all. It was just
the body must be destroyed. The soul will be saved by God. Whatever.
I hate the witch trials so much, Tim. I hate them.
There is a reason it was a dark point in human history.
But it kept going from the 1300s almost all the way to 1700s.
It
If
went up to the 1700s.
even in like almost 1800s, it was just so. Oh, and thank you to the Morbid Podcast for all the witch episodes. If they ever listen to this, I will poop my pants. But yeah, thank you for all those episodes about teaching me how awful the witch trials were. Oh. Anyway, so with that, but
Anyway,
the final
body ends up pulling him into the water. He's unable to pull her up. She pulls him into the water. And then he scrambles away, starts running, and then he ends up being hanged himself.
Yeah, by the
witch.
By the witch at this time.
Witch. I'm assuming because he had that same book.
Yes.
Right? I'm assuming it was actually the demon.
Yes. So it shows, because that's what he said, is that the demon, later in the movie would say that he was hunting down all the copies of the book or the keys of Solomon. And yeah, because at that beginning scene, the witch, quote unquote witch, raises her hand covered in claws and snarling and burns the book and then hangs the priest. And then they just left it at that, and then we just go straight to the Crusades. And it was
there was no tie-in.
There was no tie-in to that for a while, and it just, again, it made me go, okay, so maybe witches? And then we went to the Crusades, and I'm like, definitely could be witches, because the Crusades also had a lot of witch burnings. I was like, okay, this is cool. And then it went to demons, and I was like, okay, and I know that kind of correlates, because people believe that witches were conversing with demons, and blah, blah, blah.
And some of them were possessed by demons.
And some of them were possessed by demons, but then it just turned out to be a demon, and it runs away into the monastery because it's trying to find all the copies of the Keys of Solomon. And they go into the monastery, and holy crap, all the monks are dead because of the plague.
All but one.
All but one.
All of the monks had contracted the plague, and only one of them was still alive.
And if we haven't made this correlation with you guys yet, they are highly implying, actually they do imply, that the plague was caused by this demon.
Yeah.
So the Black Plague was a demonic thing. Don't know if we've ever made that clear, but just letting y'all know now.
Yeah. So anyway, they find all the dead monks, and they help the one monk pass on in peace.
I kind of like that scene.
I liked that.
I was like, that was awesome. And so now, oh my gosh, all their names are so
De Belzac.
De Belzac. They looked at De Belzac and go, "Can you perform this ritual?" And because now he has a book of the key. He has a copy of the Keys of Solomon, and they are like, "All right, we gotta go find this thing." They all like suit up, stretch up. De Belzac.
They
did you see his sash? He took one of the monk's sash, and I was like, that is some very vain. It was like covered in jewels, and I was like, oh my gosh, this cross was bigger with jewels now, and I'm like, this was okay, whatever.
Well, and Bayman, Nicolas Cage, told Kai to leave.
Yeah.
And Kai was like, nope, I made a vow. That's important.
And he wants to be like his daddy.
He wants to be like his papa.
Be a knight.
He wants to be like his papa. He wants to be a knight. He wants to fight for God. And so Bayman, I guess, kind of has like this change of heart and goes back to his, I guess he turns back to his faith. And he knights Kai.
Oh.
Which I thought was kind of cool.
It was cool. There were some parts I was like, oh, cute. He just had that like nipple. It was like, repeat the words after me. Like, sorry. Every time Nicolas Cage would talk, I was like smirking. I was like,
But yeah, he knights Kai, and then the four of them, it's just Bayman, Felsen, Kai, and De Belzac. Three knights and a priest walk into a bar. It really does sound like a joke. Jeez.
Oh my gosh, that was not planned. I wasn't even looking at your face when I said that, and then I looked. That was awesome. Woo! High five.
But yeah,
So our friends walk into the top of the monastery.
which is a library.
Yeah.
They walk into a library and they find it's implied that it's 8.
It was several monks
Yeah.
tied themselves to their desk.
They tied themselves to their desks, and they were at these like lecterns that they were writing. They were transcribing the Keys of Solomon
They were trying to make copies,
so that everybody could have it, right? So that they could
fight
be
this,
rid of the witches.
yeah, and fight this. And I guess maybe they knew. Maybe I like to think that they knew what it was, what was
Maybe.
going on. I don't know, because they had a need to make a copy, because this demon was like, and the demon at one point is like, "You brought me here, now I can finally be rid of this book. Like centuries,
Yeah.
I have like hunted it down and burned every copy." And you're like, "Oh shoot!" And and then the movie took a twist I did not expect. We see these little demons floating around,
And they possess the dead bodies of the
we
of the
get
monks.
to see zombie monks, and it was like, what?
It was literally a scene straight out of like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign.
It was not. I definitely was. I was looking at you, going, "You're gonna do stuff, aren't you?"
Oh, maybe eventually. I gotta let you forget about this first.
No, okay, whatever. I know you. Just kidding. I will not forget this, Ranger. Like, okay. Oh my gosh. Oh.
Yeah, no, that was epic, and they get to fight monks.
And we get to
they
see
fight
them?
the dead monks, which
When they were crawling up the ceiling, I was like,
that was creepy.
uncomfy, as you
really
would say.
creepy.
Uncomfy.
It was very uncomfy. But yeah, so they fight the monks while De Belzac, the priest, is trying to say the words to be rid of the demon. They're fighting, and then all of a sudden the demon pops up behind the priest and just snaps his neck.
And I was like, oh.
It was a very unsatisfying death.
Yeah, I was like,
very
oh,
unsatisfying.
that was, because I was like, oh, he's trying to be better. And yeah, he had his moments of being cruel, but he really wanted to do better. And that one point where he was saying the Lord's Prayer with the dying monk, I was like, oh. Like, I generally liked it. And there were so many things. It was a roller coaster of emotions that it was negative, though. Instead of it being a positive one, it was the kind of roller coaster that constantly had your stomach churning and never let you rest, and it was weird. And then it just went very stale. Like, imagine that kind of roller coaster. You get like the Wild Mouse from Lagoon.
I like Wild Mouse.
You do?
I
Okay.
like
Okay.
Wild Mouse.
Wicked. I don't like Wicked.
I love Wicked.
Oh my
The
gosh.
roller coasters at Lagoon don't bother me. I enjoy them. I like roller coasters.
I like Hannibal. No, I mean not Hannibal. I like Cannibal.
Cannibal.
Cannibal's a good one. That one doesn't make me sick. Oh, you know which one's lame? Okay, this one you might agree with. The Bat. That one is very bland. It's not.
Yeah.
It really doesn't do nothing.
It is unique, though.
It's unique.
It's unique,
And it really helps younger kids
points for the
transition
uniqueness.
to bigger roller coasters. But they made it seem like a big deal when it first came out. Like, I remember when I was a kid and that came out, and I went on it the first time, and I was in 4th grade. Oh my gosh, I was in 4th grade, and oh my gosh, you were like in 4th. Wait a minute, if I was in 4th, you were
in kindergarten.
No, wait. No, preschool.
Oh man.
Oh, it's fine. We're good. But yeah, I would say that was the kind of way it felt with that death. I was like, oh my gosh, that was unfulfilling. Like, he sneak up behind him and just snapped his neck, and it wasn't even like there was no music, there was no like, no, it was like, oh, he
It
dead.
just happened.
He dead.
It just happened, and it was, oh, okay. Well, that's
sad,
dissatisfying. Like, that's not. I don't know. They could have killed him better.
They could have, but it was cool because
yeah.
Kai, who's newly knighted, was still an altar boy. So
he knew Latin,
and he reads the words. And sadly, though, after the death of the priest, Felsen sacrifices himself to save Kai, and he gets engulfed by his wings.
He is incinerated.
That was kind of cool.
It was cool. It was depressing.
It was depressing because, again, it was just like he's screaming and then poof, no body.
He said, "You're buying "You're buying drinks tonight" to Bayman, because at the beginning of the movie, they're having this competition, right? Whoever can kill the most heretics as while they're crusaders, whoever kills the least amount of heretics
Has to buy.
buys
So
drinks.
it's the classic, bet. It's Gimli and
It's Gimli and Legolas.
Legolas's bet kind of thing. And he looks at him, he's like, "You're buying drinks tonight." And I'm like, "Well, no, duh, you're gonna die right now." Like, and I knew that was happening. I was like,
Everybody knew.
"Ah."
I knew from the beginning of the movie because Felson was a side character. Like he was the number 2 main character, and the number 2 always dies.
Almost always, yeah.
Almost always.
Or if they do die,
I knew-
or one of the two has to die. But this one gave me a twist because freaking
They both die.
they both die because as he's blessing the words, now that his friend has sacrificed himself and all the monks have been decapitated, as we forgot to mention, he pins the demon and the demon starts stabbing him in the back with his wings.
Bayman pins the demon.
What did I say?
You just said he, but I'm
he.
just.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Bayman pins the demon because Felson's dead.
I thought Felson does it in his ashy form. No, he is literally he is nothing. He is ash.
Thanos snapped for him.
I
That's
like
what
the way
happened.
that I want to be cremated. He got it, except he wasn't dead first. Like I was like, oh, see, that is what I would have wanted.
Yeah.
So then he still made him a grave, and I'm like, why? There was just ashes. Just put his sword in the ground. Don't make a grave. I don't know. I just laughed at that part so hard. Anyway, so spoiler alert: Bayman gets killed too, and Kai finishes the words,
And the demon incinerates.
and the demon incinerates, and the girl just plops to the floor without.
The girl plops to the floor naked.
Very-
They did it in a way that nothing is shown.
It was not. I was like, that was impressive.
The camera angle was
It was
impressive.
straight from her face, and she was like splayed out, and it was. I applauded. I was like, that was very well done, because it wasn't like supposed to be all like she didn't like rise up or anything. It was just she just sat there looking up at Bayman,
At Bayman as he's dying. And as he tells Kai to protect her, and then he dies.
He dies,
It's like, protect her.
and it shows Kai making 3 graves for each of them. One is a cross for
Belzac.
de Belzac, and then he has 2 graves. Again, I don't know why he made one for Felson, but
I don't know.
And he piled stones again. I should mention that, because of course he could have made like a little grave stone, but he literally made 3 piles of stone.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, whatever.
For me, it makes sense.
It does,
That's how
I
they
guess.
did it. That's how they did it back then.
I shouldn't judge. You're right. And so he has their 2 swords up, and Kai looks at them. He says thank you to the graves, and he looks at the girl, and she goes, "How do I say thank you to men I do not know?" And so it turns out she never knew. And again, that just
She'd
kind
been
of broke my
possessed the whole
heart. I
time.
was like, oh. And she just goes, "My name is Anna, and I thank you all." And that's the end. And she kind of ends with Anna giving us a thing of going, many people will say that this plague just died off, and it just went away, and many people died, but we will know the truth. And dun dun dun, it was a demon. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
But I love I just love what she's like, "My name is Anna," and I don't know why I got a little bit like I was
there.
and I was a little choked up. I was like, that was good. Again, the actors and actresses killed it. It was a very small cast. It was anyway. So that was the end of the movie. So now, just what would you have done differently? Because I know for me, I would have been like, no demons, no witch. We're just going to talk about
the wickedness of man.
The wickedness of man. Because again, the crusade, because I don't know, just making it a demon in the end justified it to some degree, and it bugs me. So that's my beef. That's my beef with the Salem witch trials. So to have a demon actually be part of it,
as the main antagonist.
I don't know. It just I don't like it. Or maybe we could have, if they could have shown him at more trials, the demon possessing more women. These poor women are being killed because of it, and then that fear is causing the trials. Fine, but we only see like 2 instances, and they like briefly mention that he had been pretending them to be witches for that. And I guess if they would have tried to imply it that because of this demon and many other demons, many women were falsely accused. But again, still though, it's like no, 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 no. I just I can't forgive how awful we were back then. And it's just and I guess that's just me. I guess it's also because I have 3 younger sisters, and I look back at how my sisters think and how they talk and how they act, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if my sisters would have survived back then. I have this awful thing, like if I was around back then, would I have stood up for my sisters? Like, I just, not trying to be all like, oh, no, 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 but I hate the Crusades, and I hate the Salem witch trials. To do stuff in the name of God just bugs me, whether it be for whether you believe in God or whether you believe in Allah, like all these things, like whatever the name you give your God, whether it been Thor, doesn't matter. You own up to your actions, own up to what you did. And that's Willem's hot take. And sorry, don't mean to get on to, then we can just get down from my soapbox here. All right, I'm off my soapbox. Sorry.
You're good. You're good.
That's why I couldn't, if I did this movie, I couldn't do a actual witch, or at least I would make it a witch, no demon. I would have made it reveal that maybe the priest was a witch or blah blah blah, but I really think just having it show, everything was just coincidence. The wolves eating him was just a coincidence, and maybe she was howling just to be funny. She just didn't care. She really didn't matter, but I don't know. This movie's a sensitive topic for me, so let's probably just go with what you would have done different, Tim, because this movie, if I think about this movie too much, drives the piss out of me. So,
well, better out than in,
I guess. Because you mentioned how you would have done things in a different light.
Oh yeah. I think the big thing that I would have changed is I would have put in more witches.
Okay.
And I wouldn't have made it historically accurate at all. I would have had it be like at the beginning, I would have there be an intro, a narrated intro, maybe narrated by, I kind of wish it was narrated by the girl at the beginning.
Okay.
And it could be narrated and say, throughout the ages, men and women have clung to the darkness, occasionally reaching beyond the normal into the paranormal.
Oh, so you're going fantasy.
I'm kind of going a little fantastical.
And that's fine. That would have made it more like almost like the Hansel and Gretel type movie.
A little bit.
We need to do that movie because we've done this, and I've been thinking about that movie a lot. So anyway,
maybe. But
it is spoopy season.
It is spoopy season. Oh, you got me to say it. Uh-oh. Yeah. Anyway.
So more fantastical sense.
A little more fantastical. I would have it be, throughout the ages, men and women have clung to the darkness and occasionally reaching beyond the normal to the paranormal, or something like that. Maybe worded a little different. To obtain powers of darkness that no man should hold.
So would you maybe take it back a couple centuries?
Probably.
To more dark, because now if it was Dark Ages, and then maybe I could have a demon or two in there.
Even just one century, like
1200s?
1 century back, just to start it.
Okay.
And then I would move on, and it would be after the Crusades. It would be like the 1500s.
Oh.
Like 1400s, 1500s, like the true like medieval era.
Okay.
And it would be more of a medieval movie and less of like witch trials, like Crusaders movie.
And you know what was nuts is that we hadn't really evolved much after
No.
that, but we just looked
During
different.
the Dark Ages, here's the thing about the Dark Ages. They're called the Dark Ages because there was no progression.
No, the Roman Empire had just fallen, and we completely. Oh, it was so
For a couple centuries, mankind, at least in Europe, stayed stagnant.
stopped.
Their weaponry stayed relatively the same. Occasionally, they'd invent something. They'd invent something new, like the crossbow or the trebuchet.
But
But
that was after. But that took so
that took
long
a
compared
long
to
time.
compared to these past 50 years.
The last 5 years.
Oh my gosh!
The last 5 years, we've gone through a pandemic.
Oh,
And we've progressed to AI is now a thing.
ew.
Anyway, that's not the
The
point.
progression had slowed so much. What it takes for us to do in 10 years was literally taking them to do in almost 1,000. It was
Yeah.
it. We had slowed down
To
so
be
much.
fair, they didn't have the technology we have.
You're right.
Nor did they have the manner to pursue that. They had other issues. They had to worry about whether they're going to starve or
You're
not.
right. But if Rome hadn't have fallen, and of a few other things,
If Rome hadn't fallen, I still think they wouldn't have progressed quite as far. It took us a long time for a reason. Obviously, shave off maybe 200 years.
ooh, even still, adding, if you think that of what we could have had, even 200 years would have been. Still think, yeah,
Yeah.
slow progression. But anyway, we're in here to talk about the
No.
Roman Empire and stuff.
Anyway,
But
it would have been in the Dark Ages, and it would have been back, and we would have seen some scenes of witches, and I can't call them wizards because that makes it sound like Harry Potter or Gandalf, but like witches, men and women accessing dark powers to kill their kings and to kill all manner of man and to start plagues.
so random question for you, Tim, for everyone that doesn't know, because I didn't know there was a difference. What is the difference between a wizard, a witch, and a warlock?
It depends on the context.
Oh,
A witch, in historical context, is anybody who accessed dark magic in the eyes of the church or in the eyes of any civilization.
okay.
Historically, in real life, that was a witch. More often than not, it was a woman. In fantasy, our more modernized fantasy, thanks to Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and all of these other creators, these other authors and creators of worlds, in the more modern era, a wizard is a man and a witch is a woman. They can be good or evil either way. And a warlock, it really depends on the context. If you take Dungeons and Dragons, for example, right, a wizard is just a wizard or a witch. They fall under the same class. It's literally just somebody who pursued knowledge as their means of gaining magic. Whereas a warlock is somebody who made a pact with a demon.
Ah,
Historically, that would have been a witch instead. People way back when, right, during the witch trials and everything, during the era of the witch, essentially, the season of the witch, if you will, witches generally were seen to have made a deal with Satan, with a devil or a demon, some dark entity. And that is what a warlock is in Dungeons and Dragons. In other terms, right, you take The Legend of Zelda, for example, Ganondorf is considered a warlock.
oh,
He is a powerful just magic user. He is just somebody who has access to magic. You look in other historical fantasy, the story of King Arthur, for example, Merlin is considered either a wizard or a warlock. He's just a magic user. He's somebody who has access to magic.
okay. So for the sake of So for the sake of this movie, you would just probably say men and women are witches
I would have blanketed it.
as
The
witches.
same exact way that they did in the Crucible.
And that's kind of what people are more leaning towards today. I've been reading a lot more books,
Mm-hmm.
and when they mention witches, they say
It was a man or a woman.
it's a man or a woman. So that's kind of what they're going
Mm-hmm.
for. Wizard, people say, is more of I use wand or staff.
Yeah.
And then warlock is the whole I made a pact with a demon sort of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
that's cool. So okay, so witches. So we need to
Witches.
try to get out of our head that that's just women. It could either
Uh-huh.
be, it could also be a man.
Yes.
Because I hear witch, all I think of is I just see the Wicked Witch of the West from Wizard of Oz every time.
Yeah.
It's typically what I imagine.
I'm sorry. I imagine Hermione Granger or Bellatrix Lestrange, one of the two.
Oh,
Depending
Bellatrix
on,
even worse.
depending on the context. I think she is a better villain than Voldemort, personally.
Nope.
We're not here to talk about Harry
Umbridge is
Potter.
the worst.
Umbridge inarguably is the worst.
I want to punch her.
She is the actress did a fantastic job.
We've mentioned this so many times.
She is evil. We've had this conversation
so
a
many
lot.
times. Oh, anyway,
Anyway,
so your movie,
it would be
witches.
witches.
There's witches. It is a season of a witch, if you
It
will.
is the season of the witch. And what I would end up doing is instead of having Nicolas Cage and Ron Perlman be crusaders, I would have them be knights of a king. I would just have them be regular knights of a king. I would have the plague, a plague. It doesn't have to be the bubonic plague. A plague. It can look the same. I don't care. And it can come through. It can sweep through the land, and it can kill the king and most of the kingdom.
It could be the Red Death.
Could be the Red Death.
That was another plague.
It could be anything.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You're right.
it
It's
doesn't-
more
it doesn't matter.
fantastical. I like when you say fantasy, just plop fantasy on there. It makes me feel a little better.
Yeah. I still would have had all of the same characters. I just would have had a little bit of a different plot. And different reasoning for everything.
Okay.
I would have it be that instead of the girl being a witch, I would have her be cursed by a witch.
Okay.
The same witch, maybe, that brought this curse to this kingdom. I'm getting a phone call. He knows we're recording.
How dare he?
We're recording. I'll call you later.
How dare he? How dare he? Is it who I think it is?
Yeah.
How dare he? Oh, he's gonna be part of this.
He is going to be part of this.
I'll probably edit that out, but still.
Probably a good idea. Anyway, I would have her be cursed by a witch, and I would have her whole thing, the whole reason that they go, I would have her probably be maybe the daughter of another knight that Bayman and Felsen were friends
Oh my
with.
gosh, what if she was just the daughter of Eckhart?
I like that even better. Eckhart could be their friend, and she could be his daughter, and that's the whole plot.
And he's been like fighting the town to try not to kill her.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, I've already buried my wife.
Because
I've already.
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh.
And maybe the town thinks the what's left of the town thinks that because she was cursed by the witch, she is now a witch. And
kind of like Ellie in The Last of Us. You don't know The Last of Us, do you?
I know.
Oh, you know.
I
Okay,
do know.
okay.
I know.
Okay.
I do know.
So kind of like The Last of Us vibe is everyone's dying of this plague and she's not. Everyone else is getting cut. Okay.
Yes.
Plague masks scare the crap out of me.
I love them for one reason: their functionality.
They were very functional.
They would take really good smelling flowers and they would stuff those flowers into the beak of the mask,
and inadvertently turn into a filter.
and it would turn into a filter, and it would filter out just the smell of decay and death. And as they breathe, they're able to smell flowers, and it would genuinely filter out some of the crap
And they would
that was in
cover
the air.
and they would like cover their mouths and they would just breathe through their nose.
Yes.
And so they would have a better chance of living. But they just I've always imagined that. Never mind. That's a random. My random thought was death during the plagues. I always imagined him transitioning his skull into a plague mask.
Plague mask. Okay.
So
I like that. I like
just
that.
that's something. Anyway, I've always loved that sort of thing. So they're like, we're gonna kill your daughter. He's like, no. And then these two knights of the king come, and
These
they're
two,
like,
the
no.
two other knights come, and maybe she's in jail, because of this.
And
She's
we can
in
still
like
have her getting
quarantine.
beat by the.
Uh-huh. And he doesn't. I do like the idea that he's a priest.
Mhm.
Um,
God was still big in King
God
Arthur's
was
time.
still big.
That's fine. I'm
Um,
totally fine with that.
and yeah, I would still have Kai. I would still have De Belzac. I would probably still have Hagamar as well. The main plot,
and the
like
main
not the main
cast.
plot, but like the main journey, I kind of like.
It's simple. It's you
Uh-huh.
go to this destination and that's it, because you have a beginning and end, and you have obstacles during the way.
I would just change the reasonings behind most things
It was just that, yeah, the
and some
main
connections
issue
and
with the
stuff.
movie was like we were second guessing the whole time, and since we kind of know that she's been possessed, we know that there is an actual witch. We can still have her having those scenes of her, like, lustfully
Maybe
talking
she's
to her.
being possessed in those moments. And here's something that I want. I want the actual witch that cursed her to be following them the whole way.
Do you think I would probably imagine we have maybe a couple of, since they're going on a journey, but since they still have propriety, maybe they have a few women to help the young woman change, because you can't just have a woman go alone with a bunch of men.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe they could at least have a few escorts. Maybe they have a few squire boys with them to do that.
Maybe I don't know. I kind of want to keep that party
Okay.
the way it was.
So you're just saying the witch is following.
The witch ish.
Ish?
I would have De Belzac be the witch.
Oh.
I would have De Belzac the priest. I would have him be the witch, and they get to their destination.
I'm
right,
over here
to
being
the-
awful, thinking it should be Kai.
I thought about it. I thought about it. I do like the idea that Kai wants to be a knight, though. I like his story.
Okay.
De Belzac can just I don't care. I don't care about De Belzac.
Could we have it that maybe there's a moment where they think De Belzac dies, and then he comes back later in the movie.
Maybe at the bridge
He falls.
he falls.
And then he comes up later, and then they're like, "Oh my gosh, you
Maybe
made it."
he and Bob, we can have another person. Bob, we could have our classic Bob that we have in all of these. come in, and he could fall with De Belzac.
Oh. Bob saved my life. He risked himself. He pulled me out of the water, but he was taken away. And you're like, oh no. It turns out, no, they both died. And then Bayman at the end of the movie could pull his sword on the priest, and it turns out he knew it was a witch the whole time. And we're all like, ooh.
Maybe. I don't know.
We still got to have that Nicolas Cage cheese, and that would be the scene. I knew it was you after that fall.
I knew it was you.
No man could survive that fall, Like, no man could just survive it. Like,
Uh-huh.
Sorry.
No, I agree though.
So,
I think
would you still have Eckhart die then?
I would. And I would have De Belzac be the one with Eckhart. I wouldn't have it be Kai. I would have it be De Belzac and Eckhart, and they would be chasing the girl, mostly because De Belzac, as the witch, cannot lose this one.
Okay.
For some reason. Maybe it's the classic, like, I've got to bring her to this monastery and sacrifice her so that
I'm gonna steal her. I'm gonna steal her youth,
steal
or whatever.
steal her soul, or destroy her soul, maybe to bring a curse upon the whole land. In this monastery, this place of power.
I mean, we could honestly
know.
keep the Keys of Solomon thing.
We could.
We could say that, and she's trying to lead them to it, and then the witch is following from behind, and we could still have
And that could be a really good reason for them to be going, is because this is Anna. This is the daughter of Eckhart.
Mhm.
And Eckhart will not see his daughter die. He would rather take her to the monastery, have her have her soul purged of evil and see her live, even though it's a perilous journey. And
Or they
it's
just want to like prove that it's not her, because the thing
mhm,
is, even though she's been possessed, she has like the mark of the witch or whatever.
yeah.
Everyone's blaming like, no, she's the witch. He's like, no, 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 and they're like trying to do the trials and like we have to throw her in the river, and he's like, no, 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 she's been possessed, and then like that's when um, Bayman and him come over and they've worked with many possessions, and
Hmm.
they're men of God, they're men of the they're knights, they're holy knights, and they grab her arm and they go, you see this here, this is the mark of the witch, she's been cursed. Like all that cheesiness, and we're like, oh, and so they're
Uh,
like, all right, we'll believe you this time, knight, but what shall we do now that the king is dead? And he's like, I will take the girl, and you're like, all right.
uh, maybe they could. Maybe the king has a son. Maybe the king has a young son that he'll give the crown to or something. I don't
Maybe,
know.
I don't know, just something like that
We can fill those plot holes
later.
later. But
But for
like
the most part, just what little things we change. I already think that the idea of having her being Eckhart's daughter, of her actually being possessed, having this be more fantasy.
I don't want Eckhart to die quite yet.
Okay.
Honestly, I kind of want Felsen to die instead of Eckhart
At that scene?
at that scene.
Oh.
And then Eckhart can be reunited with his daughter.
Oh,
And
he
then
could be the one that dies at the end.
he could be the one protecting her. He ends up dying so that Kai can read the manuscript to kill the witch.
Maybe. Maybe they
Or
want to
it could be like they have
maybe
to
they want
read
to
the
turn maybe they
manuscript.
want to turn her into a witch.
Maybe no.
Well, no, because sometimes they believe that you would have to be possessed and you would be, you would turn to a witch by possession, or you would just be marked, and maybe she would just turn into a witch and she's just trying to be turned. And maybe throughout the night she keeps having visions of a strange hooded woman coming up to her and be like, you have the mark, child. You're more than welcome to join us. And she like keeps reaching her hand out to her, like, join and we'll get rid of all of them and you'll be free of this. And they're like, these are just men, like or like just something like that. Like this, like, what good will you have here? Everyone's already blaming you. Join us. You'll have power. We could have her like having what is Anna's conflict? So we could have her having that.
I kind of want her to almost be catatonic most of the time.
Oh.
And be unable to speak most of the time that she's like awake, and very, very few and far between.
So she'll go into seizures.
Speak. Maybe she can have seizures, and she'll maybe every now and again she'll speak. Maybe when she's being possessed, she'll speak creepily.
Yeah, this is the hard part, because it's like, do we want to keep I don't know. This is why this movie. I feel like this is probably what was so icky about making this movie, was they were like, oh, what do we do? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's so because I want Anna to remember. That's one thing I want, is I want Anna to remember, because I felt it kind of hurt at the end of the actual movie that she didn't know a thing, and it was like, owie. Because she was like, I was there. It's like, were you there though? You don't remember a thing. The Kai could be totally lying to you. Like, you don't know nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wish she had I have visions. I remember, like, even if they were to say like, I remember a few things, but I remember his face. I remember how kind he was, and you're like, oh, but they didn't. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. No, and I kind of agree. I would definitely have the De Belzac be the witch. I would have Kai be the one. I would almost have it be less of a they just outright kill the witch by reading, and it be more of a, okay, I finished the passage, now the witch is mortal and she can die.
Mm.
And then I would have in that fight, it would be a fight. It would be a really fun fight.
Would you have more witches show up?
I would have a couple more. But I would have most of them just die by Bayman's hand and by Eckhart's hand.
What if we had multiple encounters with witches? Not multiple, but like a few encounters.
I would
and
have
that's
a couple.
when
like
they
that,
like reach her to try
I
to
would
be
have
like,
a couple.
join us.
I would have a couple moments like that, like with the wolves.
Hmm.
I kind of
It
I
could
would
be it could
almost
be a
scrap
feral witch.
I would almost scrap the wolves and I would just have the witches.
You could have a
I
witch
would
who
just have
does
it be like a
control
coven of
wolves.
witches, like 6 or 7 witches that work together. They fight. They end up killing Hagamar, um, because Hagamar wants to kill the girl.
I really think trying to have them join her coven forcefully
Hmm.
would be. I really think that that could be a good
Hmm.
thing because it really shows that like Anna's torn. Maybe she was tricked into joining the coven. Makes it more of like these girls felt, or these men and women felt pressured, and they just weren't happy, and they thought maybe making a deal with this coven would be the solution, but it like
Hmm.
mars them. I don't know, witches are kind of an iffy thing for me, as we've discussed. I'm not a
Uh,
big fan of. I would have to look more into. I would have to look more into D&D kind of logic and study more of that because I really think like making it a coven, which is trying
hmm.
to recruit more, and Anna is like,
Yeah. Here's the thing with Dungeons and Dragons, um, with that mythology, I guess, and with that style of creature, that style of monster, the witches that we would be seeing in here in Dungeons and Dragons, they're called hags.
oh,
Like we still have them, right? They still make deals with people. They still fly on broomsticks. They still have their cauldrons, bubble bubble, toil and trouble, whatever.
something wicked this way comes.
Uh-huh. I don't know. I almost feel like having like a coven. Well, technically a coven is just three witches. It's a group
Really?
of three witches.
How do you know all this?
I'm a nerd.
I'm sitting here at the other side of
um
the fence going, this is all foreign to me. My sister, if she listened to this, will probably be yelling at you.
here's the
At
thing.
me. Sorry, I
I've
mean
been
not you.
playing Dungeons and Dragons for a long time.
Okay.
And my dad can tell you I've spent countless hours just reading, pouring through the Dungeons and Dragons books and just trying to learn things, learn how to play the game, learn how to play the monsters, understand the monsters better, so that I can do stuff like what we did on Saturday, where I can kill you with a monster that has superpowers.
That was awful.
It was epic.
No, it wasn't. Don't listen to him.
Um,
But
but anyway, that's witches. They're hags. In Dungeons and Dragons, the evil witches are hags.
so that's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking hags,
I'm imagining hags.
coven. I really think
Coven
like,
is 3.
coven is 3. Maybe it
And
could be even a
together
bigger
with
one.
3, with a coven of witches, the 3 add each other's power to each other.
So
they
maybe-
become more powerful as 3. So maybe it's 2 witches.
Maybe it's 2. They're trying to make
and
3.
they want to make 3.
Or maybe one of them's getting severely old and they want her body.
Well,
Something
a
like that.
witch, a hag doesn't worry about age. They don't die by
Fine.
age.
Then maybe they just want her essence. I don't know. Maybe they just wanted like a good
I kind of like the
spirit.
idea that maybe it's just DeBelzac, and he's like, I want to start a coven, join me, kind of
Okay,
thing.
maybe.
That could be kind of cool. And maybe instead of the wolves, it could be like just ghosts and images of witches.
Or
It could be a coven of witches.
here's what I'm thinking. 3 witches, and we just do total Legend of Zelda cookie cutter. We have 3 boss fights.
Okay.
One is a feral witch, and she controls wolves. The first one is a witch of tricks and mind
and
tricks and the bite. And
illusions
that's when they fall into the pit, and we see like the bodies get up too. That would be nuts.
Okay.
The multi-grave, with not the multi-grave,
mass grave?
the mass grave. They bodies get up and they start changing, and they transition to people of their past. And all of them are like going into regret, and then that's when Felson could die because maybe he was part of the Crusades, and he has all this regret from the Crusades and gets killed or something like that. No, because you said the Crusades were going on for a long time.
They did go on for a
So
long time. I don't know.
But yeah, I think if we had
I would
that,
kind of keep the Crusades out of this. I don't like the Crusades.
so I think we could have first boss fight, one witch, be. Yeah, there's always 3 witches. Oh my gosh, why? Because
Yeah.
you have it in Stardust, you have it in
Macbeth.
Macbeth, you have it in oh my gosh, the one that like everyone loves, the Disney one that everyone loves. Boy turns into a black cat.
Oh,
Sleepy Hollow? No,
Hocus Pocus.
Hocus Pocus. Wow, everyone here is going, well, I've only seen it once.
It's pretty
Sorry.
good.
It is good. I didn't want to watch the
I
second one.
haven't seen the
I
second
don't
one.
want to. Anyway, so it could be a coven, and we could have maybe the first one is a man, the illusionist be a man. He could be one of the people that was with them, and that's when they do that, and he kills off Felson. Second one, that's when we get the bridge, and maybe that's when the feral wolf is the feral wolf woman is chasing them. They kind of hear howling,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like causing all of it to
And they've
come.
got to hurry across
And they have to
the
hurry because the
bridge.
wolves are coming.
Uh-huh.
And then they get across, like, oh, we made it. And then they see her standing there, and more wolves come, and
Oh,
they're like, ah.
that's a creepy image.
And then that's how
I
we
like
lose
it.
Hagamar. And then we get to the monastery, and they were like, all right, where's the big bad one? Where's the final one? And we just hear this laughing and sobbing. And we turn over, and then we see him throw his book down. And he's like, you killed my brother and sister. And you're like, oh,
Uh-huh.
and then I don't know what he would do. I don't know what he would do.
I feel like he would start burning the
Okay,
book. But maybe
He could
with
be
the
the
power
plague.
of the coven lost, and it's just the one witch. Maybe now the girl could awake, and she could help with the fight. Maybe she throws herself onto the book.
Maybe. Or
Stop
maybe
from
they're just
burning.
going to try to. Or maybe they get there. Oh, no, they get there. And all the monks start dying of the plague. And they're all like, everyone get back. And we see de Belzac's skin start crawling, and he's the cause. His powers are what's been causing plague. So we have illusion for people going insane, feral wolves, which have been attacking the villages and eating people. And then we have plague. And then he's causing them to kill the monastery. He's like, finally, I can get rid of these lousy, like, holy men. I can't stand them. And he goes, now that you've killed my brother and sister, I at least can start my coven anew with a new sister. And then he starts possessed, like trying to get her, and maybe she gets a little possessed too, or maybe she starts maybe leaning towards it and starts trying to use her power, and that's when her father like sacrifices himself, and it snaps her out of it. And that's what causes her to not.
And maybe she's the one who deals the killing blow. I like that. I like that.
And then they all kind of sit there, and they all cry. They bury her dad. Kai's with her.
They bury Bayman. I like the idea of Bayman sacrificing himself.
So maybe after she maybe she was going to kill Kai in her possessed form, and her dad gets in the way. He like holds her face, and he goes, you can fight this. And like kisses her head, and she starts crying, her eyes uncloud, and she goes, daddy, and like we have all that awful stuff. And oh, so sad. Oh,
Yeah,
I think the three bosses,
kind of like it.
I think it kind of helps the mood, because we still get all those obstacles. I think I love the idea of the feral witch. They're like, you just see something walking on its hind legs, and they're like, is that a wolf? And it stands up, and they're like, oh, bah! And we can get your favorite thing. We can still get the zombie monks.
Good.
We can still get the zombie monks at the end, and they can fight. But I think I think if we went that fantasy route, I think that would be a good way to go, because we could still put a little bit of humor every now and then with fantasy. I feel like we could include the Monty Python joke at the thing. He's like, we need to take my daughter out. They're like, it's not going to change anything. She weighs as much as a feather. Like, just that joke could still be put in, and all that fun stuff. The wolves are coming across, and they're like backing them up. And right when they get across the bridge, it snaps, and all the wolves fall into the the river, and one guy's hanging on the rope, and they pull him up, and maybe she then helps with her possessiveness and pulls Felson or Kai up from the rope single-handedly and looks at him. smiles and throws him because she's still kind of possessed.
I kind of like the idea that maybe when she's being possessed, her eyes are cloudy, but when she's lucid, you can see her eyes.
Okay.
And maybe she pulls him up clouded, and then
When they uncloud,
lucidity,
she
she drops him
and then they catch
into
him.
Bayman's arms.
Something like
Something
that.
like that.
Okay. I could see her doing that. I still
Something
would
like that.
like
Because that would kind of give us a kind of an image of, okay, she's being possessed. She is not a witch herself. She is being possessed.
Mm-hmm.
And when she is possessed, she has great power. But when she's not, she is herself.
Okay. I still think that
Something like that.
I think the idea of maybe them trying to form a larger coven, maybe get another one. They made a deal with this girl, or I don't know what the thing, or maybe just stealing her essence. Either way, because she's, the virgin, all those things. And even though the plagues are coming, they've noticed that a lot of young girls are disappearing. But I think them trying to maybe add another witch, maybe they've noticed that she didn't fit in, maybe she was torn, maybe she couldn't stand it, maybe her mom was killed by the witch trials, just something like that.
Maybe
just something that made her on the verge of like, I could easily become a witch, father. I could.
Well, maybe it could be more. They kill the first witch, right? They're basically they're using her to get to the monastery, like having her be the reason to go there, and then they kill the first witch, and then the other two are like, well, now we only have two. That's not a coven. Maybe we can convert her.
Maybe
Something like that, and then
so
maybe
does the coven have to be
Debelzak
three?
gets yes.
Okay, so it has to be three.
Their power comes when they form
By
a
the
trifecta.
power of three. It's a magic number.
It is a magic number.
Oh my gosh.
It is a number of power.
It is.
In
That makes a
all
lot of sense.
in all forms.
Wow.
That is, I mean, a triangle is the strongest shape in geometry and in like when you're building things.
No, you're right.
Right? It's just everything.
It is everything. Okay, so maybe they try. I think that maybe they just want to steal her essence, but she kind of sympathizes with them for the longest time, and she didn't fully understand how evil they were, or maybe they're just misunderstood, and maybe the way that she thought, people were all, oh, she was just a free-spirited thinker, and people were just giving her crap. And maybe, and they were like, your daughter's a witch. She's always been strange. And he's like, she was not strange. Your wife was just as strange. That's probably why she died of the plague. And just socks him, just socks somebody, just Eckhart is just done with people. So I think that could make it work. I think that could work. They could just want to steal.
This movie go up from a, what was it, a 5.3 out of 10
to at least I think
a 7 or an 8.
A 7 or an 8. I think we've fixed enough. I think with some good acting, some good scores, it could definitely be there. But I think those few little changes. I think the cookie cutter, 1 witch, 2 witch, 3 witch, dead witch. Like I think that would be a good cookie cutter way to do it. It's
classic. It's classic. It's a little cliche, but
again,
it
three
works.
is a good number.
3 is a good number,
and I really like that. I think it adds the fantasy flair. It's not as dark because again, you all do not want my take on it. Because I will not show mercy to the Crusades and the witch trials. I will make all of them. I will, yeah. It would just kind of be a realistic story. And it would just be that they were torn. Still conflicted if they would kill her or not. Because that's just how awful the Crusades and witch trials were. So
they were terrible.
I like your take better, and I can, if you make it fantasy and you make it hag sort of thing, I could have a great summer. It will be great.
Hag, have a great
summer. So sinister. Oh, so I think that's all that needs to be said about summer of the witch. Have a great summer of the witch. Hags. It's going to be the name of this.
Oh man, no.
It will be have a great summer of the witch. Hagsum. Hagsum. Have a great summer of the witch. Season of the witch. Sorry. Yeah, no, that'll be the cover. That will be the title. HAGSOTW.
HAGSOTW.
Anyway, but thank you everyone we hope you like that. Holy crap, we're almost halfway through. We've almost been doing this for 5 months now. Wait, no. 4
4 months,
months,
almost
4
four.
months. It's
Yeah,
been a lot
it's
of
been a
fun.
while.
But yeah, thank you all for listening, and we hope that you keep listening, and
We'll see you later, pitches.
we